Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're really digging into one of history's most legendary moments, the Battle of Thermopylae.
Yeah, it's Stan. Yeah, the 300 Spartans.
Exactly. But we want to get past the movie version. We've got some great source material, mainly an article looking closely at the historical accounts.
Right.
Our mission today is to unpack what the sources actually say, try to separate the hard facts from the epic legend, and understand the real story and its legacy, which is pretty surprising, actually.
It really is. And to get it, you have to set the scene. We're talking 480 BC. You've got Xerxes, the great king of Persia. His empire is just vast Balkans to India. Huge. And the sources, well, the ancient ones, paint this picture of an absolutely colossal army.
Like millions, right? That's the number you always hear.
Yeah, Herodotus talks about over 2 million fighting men, something like 1,200 warships. It's probably an exaggeration, but the scale was immense.
And he wasn't just after land, was he?
No, this was personal. It was vengeance. His father, Darius, had been beaten by the Greeks at Marathon 10 years before. Xerxes was there to, let's say, settle the score.
So this massive force is heading for Greece. And who's standing in the way first? King Leonidas of Sparta.
That's the man. But, it wasn't just the 300 Spartans like the legend suggests.
Right. The sources make that clear. He had his 300, yes, the elite. But there were others.
Quite a few others, actually. Around 6,000 soldiers from different Greek cities in the south and center, including about 400 Thebans and 700 Thespians we know of.
That context is crucial. And the Spartans themselves, the 300 homoioi, tell us about them. They weren't your average soldiers.
Oh, definitely not. These were the full citizens, the equals. They'd all gone through the agoge.
That brutal training system.
Brutal is the word. Plato apparently called it systematic training in the endurance of pain. They were basically professional soldiers from childhood. You'd know them by the long hair, the beards, the scarlet cloaks.
A real contrast to the other Greeks there.
Huge contrast. Most of the others were, well, amateurs. Farmers, craftsmen, landowners called up when needed. Not lifelong warriors like the Spartans.
And there's another group often missed, isn't there? The sources mention the helots.
Yeah, that's a really important point the material brings up. Maybe 900 helots. Spartan state slaves were there too, fighting and dying alongside the Spartans.
That does complicate the simple free men fighting for freedom narrative.
It absolutely does. It shows the whole spectrum of Spartan society was involved in that defense, willingly or not. But all the free Greeks, Spartans and others, fought as hoplites.
Heavily armored infantry.
Right. The name hoplite comes from their gear, to hopla. Heavy bronze stuff helmet, breastplate, greaves. Probably weighed about 30 kilos, maybe more.
Wow, that's a lot to carry into battle.
It is, and that big round shield the aspices carried on the left arm. Crucially, it protected not just you, but also the right side of the man next to you in the phalanx.
Teamwork built right into the equipment and their weapons.
Main weapon was the long thrusting spear, the dory. Then a short sword, the xiphos, for close-in fighting, and a knife as a backup.
Okay, so you have these heavy Greek hoplites. Facing them is Xerxes' army. We talked about the huge numbers from ancient sources. What do modern historians think is more realistic?
Yeah, modern estimates bring it down quite a bit, maybe somewhere between 100,000 and 300,000, still vastly outnumbering the Greeks.
Still an incredible force, and diverse, too.
Extremely diverse. The sources list contingents from all over the empire. Persians, Medes, Assyrians, Egyptians, Bactrians, Indians. I mean, just a huge mix.
And they look different, too, right? Not the bronze armor look.
Very different. More like soft caps or tiaras, embroidered tunics, scale armor, often. And those baggy trousers the Greeks found so strange.
And their main weapon wasn't the spear.
Primarily the bow. That's where the famous line about arrows darkening the sky comes from. They had spears and swords too, but their spears were generally shorter than the Greek hoplite spears, which was a disadvantage in a shield wall fight.
Okay, so this massive, diverse army arrives at Thermopylae. Tell us about the location itself, the Hot Gates.
Right, Thermopylae means hot gates, named for some local sulfur springs. It's this narrow pass squeezed between the mountains and the sea, the main road, really, between northern and southern Greece.
And the key was how narrow it was.
Exactly. The source material highlights that at its narrowest point, the pass was only about 15.5 meters wide. For maybe 20 meters or so, sheer cliffs on one side, sea on the other. A natural bottleneck.
And that's the core of Leonidas' strategies.
Precisely. Right? Use the terrain. That narrow choke point completely neutralizes Xerxes' advantage in numbers. He couldn't win his whole force to bear at once. He had to funnel them in.
It's almost elegant in its simplicity. Force them into a meat grinder.
That's pretty much it.
So Xerxes gets there, sees this relatively tiny Greek force. What did he think?
According to Herodotus, he just waited for 4 days. He assumed they'd see his massive army and just run away.
He didn't understand the Spartans, clearly.
Not at all. And this is where those famous stories of defiance come in.
The one about the arrows.
Yeah, the warning that the Persian archers were so numerous their arrows would block out the sun, and the Spartan Dinas is supposedly quipped, "Good, then we'll have our battle in the shade."
Classic Spartan dryness, if it's true.
If it's true. Wonderful line, though. And the other really famous one, Xerxes sends a message demanding they lay down their weapons. Leonidas' reply, "Molen lab."
Come and get him.
Exactly. Though, again, the source material rightly cautions this is probably later tradition, not something Herodotus recorded directly from the event. Still, it captures the spirit perfectly.
Absolutely. So the waiting ends, the fighting starts, and for 2 days, the Greeks hold.
They hold spectacularly. They inflict massive casualties on the Persians, tens of thousands according to some accounts, though likely exaggerated. Herodotus says Xerxes learned he had many subjects, but few real men. Few warriors like the Greeks.
Who did Xerxes send in first?
He started with the Medes and Scythians. When they failed to break through, he sent in his best troops.
The immortals.
His 10,000 elite, hand-picked infantry. Even they couldn't dislodge the Greeks. The Spartans, in particular, showed incredible skill.
That feigned retreat thing?
Yeah, Herodotus describes it. They'd pretend to break and run, drawing the Persians forward in disorder, then suddenly turn and cut them down. Required incredible discipline.
The sources paint a brutal picture. Diodorus talks about the ground being piled high with bodies.
And Herodotus has that amazing image of Xerxes leaping up from his throne 3 times in alarm as he watched his troops being slaughtered. You can feel the shock and frustration.
And the narrow pass meant the Greeks could rotate their units,
Yeah.
right? Keep fresh men fighting.
Yes, they used their smaller numbers very effectively that way. Though Diodorus claims Leonidas' men refused to rest at all, driven by this intense desire for glory.
Which sounds maybe a bit superhuman.
Well, the source notes modern scholars question the realism of never resting, but you have to factor in the adrenaline, the sheer life or death intensity. People can push themselves incredibly hard in those situations.
Remember that story Demaratus, the exiled Spartan king advising Xerxes, told about seeing the Spartans exercising, combing their long hair before the battle?
Right. Xerxes thought it was strange, maybe even frivolous.
But Demaratus explained, no, this is what Spartans do when they're preparing to face death. They're getting ready to die according to Spartan law. Stand firm, never retreat, conquer or die.
It shows that deep cultural programming, doesn't it? A calm, almost ritual preparation for what they saw as the ultimate duty. Very different from Xerxes just throwing numbers at the problem.
So 2 days of this bloody stalemate. How does it finally break?
It breaks because of betrayal. On the second day, Xerxes is apparently at his wit's end. Then a local man comes forward. Ephialtes of Trachis. He tells Xerxes about a mountain path and track, really, that goes around the Greek position. Leonidas actually knew about this path, or at least learned about it when he got there.
And he'd posted guards on it.
Yes, he tasked some of the allied troops, the Phocians, with guarding this route, which, in hindsight...
might not have been the best choice.
Well, Xerxes immediately sent his immortals, led by General Hydarnes, with Ephialtes guiding them. Herodotus says they marched overnight, reaching the summit near dawn.
Although the source mentions some skepticism about moving 10,000 men through mountains in the dark.
Yeah, it sounds difficult. But somehow they got there? And the Phocians guarding the pass?
What happened with them?
They heard the Persians coming through the oak woods. They scrambled to arm themselves, but seemed to think they were the primary target. So they retreated to higher ground nearby to make a stand.
Leaving the path.
Completely open. Hydarnes and the Immortals just marched past them and started heading down towards the rear of the Greek position.
A critical failure. And the sources mention Leonidas gets criticized for this later.
Yes, modern commentators point out that maybe he should have put Spartans, or at least a Spartan commander, in charge of guarding such a crucial point. Relying solely on allies for that task proved fatal.
Okay, so the trap is closing. Leonidas finds out he's about to be surrounded. How did he hear?
Sources differ. Maybe deserters from the Persian side warned him, or his seer, Megistius, supposedly foresaw it in the sacrifices. Either way, he knew the end was near.
And this is the moment of decision. The famous part.
The pivotal moment. He makes the choice. He dismisses most of the other Greek allies, tells them to leave, save themselves, fight another day for Greece.
But not his Spartans.
No. He ordered his 300 Spartans to remain. to stay and fight and die.
But they weren't completely alone in that final stand, were they?
No, that's important. The 700 Thespians refused to leave. They chose voluntarily to stay and die with the Spartans. Incredible loyalty.
In the Thebans, their situation seems more complex.
It is. Herodotus claims Leonidas basically kept the 400 Thebans there against their will, as hostages almost, because he suspected their city leaned towards Persia. But other interpretations, maybe more likely, suggest the Thebans who stayed were actually loyalists to the Greek cause, making their own stand.
So maybe around 1,400 men facing the end. Spartans, Thespians, and those Thebans. Why? Why did Leonidas make that choice? To stay and die.
That's the million drachma question, isn't it? The sources offer a few possibilities. Herodotus's main take is that they were always just an advance guard. Their job was to hold the pass until the main Greek army arrived after the Olympics and the Spartan Carnea festival were over. Religious truces held them back.
So maybe he was just following orders, holding out as long as possible.
That's one view. But there's also evidence suggesting he knew, or suspected, it was a suicide mission from the start.
Like choosing only Spartans who had sons.
Exactly. Herodotus mentions that. The idea was to ensure their family lines wouldn't die out. And Plutarch adds that story about Leonidas telling his wife, Gorgo, to remarry a good man and bear good children before he left Sparta. That sounds like a man who doesn't expect to return.
Definitely. What other reasons are suggested?
Well, Diodorus has a different story. He claims the Spartan magistrates, the ephors, actually wanted Leonidas to take more men. But he refused, saying something like, "There are enough here for the purpose," implying the purpose was to die gloriously for the freedom of all.
Framing it as a deliberate sacrifice for a greater cause.
Right. And then there's the oracle. The oracle at Delphi had apparently given a prophecy. Either Sparta would be destroyed by the Persians, or it must lose a king.
Ah. So Leonidas chose to be that king. To save Sparta by dying.
That's the theory Herodotus leans towards. Leonidas stayed for glory, yes, but also, perhaps, to consciously fulfill the oracle. Of course, some modern scholars wonder if the oracle story wasn't just created after the battle to explain his actions, or maybe even engineered by Leonidas himself.
Hard to know for sure. But whatever the mix of reasons, duty, glory, prophecy, sacrifice, the decision was made. Stand and fight.
In those final hours, the sources describe something truly intense. Diodorus gives us that famous quote from Leonidas at breakfast on the final morning.
The one about dining in Hades.
Yeah. "Have a good breakfast, men, for tonight we dine in Hades." Grim, dramatic. Maybe a bit too dramatic. Herodotus' account is less theatrical, but they knew it was coming.
So what do? Hunker down for the inevitable.
No, the opposite. Knowing they were doomed, Leonidas led the remaining men, Spartans, Thespians, Thebans, out from the narrowest part of the pass into a slightly wider area.
They went on the attack, knowing they were surrounded.
Yes. They went out to meet their end, to inflict as much damage as possible. Herodotus says they fought with frenzy, completely disregarding their own safety.
Just unleashing everything they had left.
Absolutely. The fighting was apparently so ferocious that Herodotus claims Persian officers had to use whips to force their own soldiers forward into the Greek ranks.
Incredible. And there are stories of individual heroism, too.
Yes. The source highlights the story of Eurytus, a Spartan who'd been struck with some kind of eye disease and was nearly blind. He ordered his helot attendant to lead him into the heart of the battle, where he plunged in and died fighting.
Unbelievable commitment, even facing blindness.
It shows the depth of that Spartan ethos. By the time Hydarnes and the Immortals attacked from the rear, Leonidas himself had already fallen.
But they'd taken a heavy toll.
A very heavy toll. They killed many Persians, including, significantly, 2 of Xerxes' own half-brothers. Many Persians were apparently pushed off the causeway into the sea and drowned, or trampled by their own side in the crush.
And the story about retrieving Leonidas' body.
Right, Herodotus makes a point of mentioning that. He says the Spartans drove the Persians back 4 times to recover the body of their king. It's described in a way that deliberately echoes scenes from Homer's Iliad, like the fight over Patroclus' body.
Herodotus linking their sacrifice to the heroes of myth.
Definitely. After that, the remaining Spartans and the loyal Thespians retreated. They fell back to a small hillock or bluff within the pass.
And this is where they lost touch with the Thebans.
Yes. Around this time, the Thebans apparently decided they'd had enough. They stepped away from the Spartans and Thespians, held up their hands, and surrendered to Xerxes. Herodotus says they were branded as traitors afterwards.
So the last stand was just the Spartans and Thespians on that hill.
That's right, fighting desperately. By this point, Herodotus says most of their spears were broken. They were fighting with their short swords, their knives, even, he says, with their bare hands and teeth.
Just raw survival instinct and defiance. How did the Persians finally overwhelm them?
Even cornered and outnumbered, they were still incredibly dangerous in hand-to-hand combat. So the Persians decided enough was enough. They stopped trying to close in. They surrounded the hill and just rained down arrows, javelins, projectiles.
Until no one was left standing. That must have been when the sky truly darkened.
Very likely. A grim end to an incredible resistance. And Xerxes, he was still furious.
What did he do?
Even though Leonidas was already dead, Xerxes ordered his head cut off and mounted on a pike, a real act of desecration showing how much the Spartan defiance had angered him.
And he tried to cover up his own losses.
Herodotus claims so. He supposedly lost around 20,000 men at Thermopylae. So the story goes, he had most of his own dead buried secretly, leaving only about 1,000 Persian corpses scattered around, along with all the Greek dead. The idea was to make the victory look less costly when his troops marched past.
Did it work?
Apparently not entirely. Herodotus says later Greek visitors saw through the ruse. They noticed that among the bodies Xerxes claimed were all Spartans, there were clearly helots mixed in.
So the propaganda failed.
Yeah.
What happened afterwards?
Yeah.
Was Leonidas honored?
Yes. Years later, his bones were brought back to Sparta and buried with great ceremony. They established annual games and speeches in his honor, and on that hillock where the final stand took place, they eventually erected a memorial, a stone lion.
And that famous inscription.
The epigram by the poet Simonides of Ceos, the one addressed to travelers. Go tell the Spartans, stranger passing by, that here, obedient to their laws, we lie.
Chilling. It perfectly captures that core Spartan value, obedience to the laws, to the state, above everything.
It became the epitaph not just for those men, but almost for the Spartan ideal itself.
So the legacy. Obviously, it's huge in popular culture. You see Spartans as team names. There's the film 300.
Right, that immediate visual legacy is strong, but the deeper historical impact is arguably much more significant.
How so?
Leonidas and his men became the ultimate symbol of the Spartan warrior spirit. Thucydides, writing later about a different group of Spartans trapped in another war, reflects this perception. The belief that Spartans would never surrender no matter the odds, they'd just fight to the death.
Which must have put incredible pressure on later Spartans.
Immense pressure. You see it in the stories of the two known Spartan survivors of Thermopylae that the sources mention.
Right, Pantites and Aristodemus.
Pantites had been sent away as a messenger. When he got back to Sparta and found out what happened and that he'd missed the glorious death, he apparently couldn't live with the shame and hanged himself.
Wow. And Aristodemus, he was the one with the eye disease.
Yes, he and Eurytus both had it. Eurytus charged in to die, but Aristodemus accepted dismissal and went home. When he got back, he was treated as a pariah, a coward, a trembler, they called him. No one would speak to him or even give him fire. The dishonor was total.
That's brutal. It shows how absolute that code was. Live up to the ideal or face utter disgrace.
Exactly. But the key thing about Thermopylae, the battle itself, is that even though it was a tactical defeat for the Greeks,
it became a massive strategic and moral victory.
Precisely. It was incredibly inspirational. It showed the Persians were invincible. It galvanized Greek resistance.
You can draw a direct line to the later victories.
Absolutely. Later that same year, 480 BC, the Athenian leader Themistocles brilliantly used a similar strategy using a narrow strait to trap and destroy the Persian fleet at the Battle of Salamis. That was a huge turning point.
Naval Thermopylae almost.
In a way, yes. And then the next year, 479 BC, at the Battle of Plataea, it was Leonidas' own nephew, Pausanias, leading the combined Greek land forces. They crushed the remaining Persian army and effectively ended Xerxes' invasion of mainland Greece for good.
So Thermopylae set the stage for driving the Persians out.
It really did. Diodorus Siculus goes so far as to argue that Leonidas and his men were actually more responsible for preserving Greek freedom than the later victors, because their sacrifice did two things. It seriously dismayed the Persians, showing them the cost of fighting such determined men, and it massively incited the other Greeks to match their courage.
It became the standard to live up to.
Exactly. And remember, Aristodemus, the trembler...
Did he get a chance to redeem himself?
He did. He fought at Plataea the next year. Apparently, he fought with suicidal recklessness, trying desperately to erase the shame of Thermopylae. He fought bravely in a frenzy, according to Herodotus, and died in the battle, finally finding his redemption in Spartan eyes.
A tragic story, but it fits the pattern.
Yeah.
But maybe the biggest legacy of all wasn't military.
Arguably not. The source material makes a powerful case that the greatest legacy was what came after the Persian Wars were won.
The golden age of Athens.
Exactly. The flourishing of democracy, philosophy, Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, the great playwrights, the architecture like the Parthenon, all of that incredible explosion of culture and thought that fundamentally shaped Western civilization.
And the argument is that wouldn't have happened if Persia had won.
That's the strong suggestion. If Greece had been absorbed into the Persian Empire, would that unique Athenian experiment have survived and thrived? Probably not. So the stand at Thermopylae, by inspiring the Greeks to fight for and win their freedom, helped create the space for that golden age to happen.
There's that quote the source includes from Sir William Golding.
Yeah, the author of Lord of the Flies. Writing about Thermopylae, he said, "A little of Leonidas lies in the fact that I can go where I like and write what I like. He contributed to setting us free."
That really puts it in perspective. Connects that ancient battle directly to freedoms we might take for granted today.
It's a powerful thought and underlines how that sacrifice, that stand against overwhelming odds, echoed down through history.
So wrapping this up, we've gone from Xerxes' invasion, the narrow pass, the makeup of both armies,
On specific tactics, the brutal fighting, the betrayal.
the complex reasons for Leonidas' decision, the role of the Helots and the Thespians, the sheer horror and heroism of the final stand.
And the incredible multi-layered legacy. It's so much more than just 300 guys against the world.
Absolutely. The sources reveal this incredibly complex event, a military defeat that paradoxically fueled victories and maybe even helped shape the course of Western history.
A small battle, relatively speaking, but with truly profound consequences.
Okay, so here's something for you, our listeners, to think about as you reflect on all this. We've heard how the sources, ancient and modern, offer different possible reasons for why Leonidas chose to stay and die. Was he just an advance guard following orders? Was he deliberately fulfilling that Delphic oracle about a king dying? Or was he making a conscious sacrifice, as Diodorus suggests, for the freedom of all?
Yeah. The motivations are debated.
So consider this. What does the fact that we have these different interpretations, these different narratives passed down through history, tell us about how history itself is written? About the power of storytelling, and how the meaning of an event like Thermopylae can be shaped and reshaped depending on who's telling the story and why. Something to ponder.
Definitely something to think.